program. I'm with the American Islamic Association, also co-hosting this program. And to start it off, I'm going to have the organizer and the moderator, Maria Muzaffar, from the Law Office of Maria Muzaffar, to come up and start the program. Thank you.
Shalom and good evening. My name is Maria Muzaffar and I am the moderator for this town hall. I am an attorney by trade, focusing on mediation, and I'm also in awe that all of you came out today, this evening when it's cold on Sunday, which reaffirms, I think, the organizers' feelings and the co-sponsors' feelings that this is an important issue. And I always feel that when there's an important issue and there's very few voices speaking about it, that the individuals in the audience and all of us that are taking part should not be fooled by numbers. They should only focus on the substance and the power of sincerity and intent, which is very strong in the panel and in the fact that all of you are here. First of all, I'd like to start out by thanking our sponsors, the Jewish Council of Urban Affairs, a long history of advocating for civil rights in the state of Illinois. They have co-sponsored this event in commemoration and to honor the legacy of Martin Luther King. I'd also like to thank the Orland Park Prayer Center for publicizing this event, talking about it during their prayer times, and inviting us to share their space. AIA, the American Islamic Association of Frankfort, Illinois, for doing the same. We're very grateful. CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations, that has a long history of advocating for civil rights for Muslims in this country. CIOGC, the Council of Islamic Organizations of Greater Chicago, which is an umbrella group for all the Islamic organizations in the Chicagoland area. I'd like to start off just by saying a few words, and then I'm going to be introducing our panelists. Number one, why are we here? Just to give you a brief summary, I think all of you have a flyer in your hand, which talks about, in very brief words, the scenario that has brought us to this point, and the panelists will go into more detail about it. But there was and there is a reality show, called All American Muslim. It's a reality show that basically portrays Muslim Americans as regular Americans. There is one individual that is having a baby, and she's worried about having a baby. There is another woman who's marrying someone who's converting, and what the process is for that. There's someone who's talking about trying to conceive, and the different issues of belief, and conservative versus liberal. Basically, a lot of different issues that a religious community has in the United States is similar to what you see on this show. Every reality show on TLC is really focused on the premise that it's to educate and to teach people how different people around the world and around the country live. Every media show needs sponsorship, because we don't have billionaires and millionaires with great ideas. People with great ideas usually are looking for people, to help them out. So TLC goes to sponsors and they ask corporations and companies to sponsor different shows so they can run the program. Such was the case with this show. And they had solicited quite a few sponsors, including Lowe's. There is a group called the Florida Family Association, which hopefully the panelists can go into a little bit more detail. And FFA, which I would say the FFA now, contacted many of the sponsors and said, hey, this is a problem. You guys have ads during this show, and this show shows American Muslims as normal. That's a problem. And that's actually deceiving the American people, because it's showing that Muslims can live in the United States, and they actually do have a hidden agenda, which the show is not showing. So the company, and I mind you, I want to say that Lowe's is not a small company. It's a Fortune 500 company. And it is a company spread throughout the United States with Illinois state commerce outside of Illinois also. And it's really a household name. I bought my own blinds from Lowe's. If there's any question, they can look up my order with the last name Qureshi under my husband. Spent a lot of money there. And they pulled out the sponsorship from the show saying, okay, this is not something we want to be involved in. Their response was, it became a lightning rod for our customers, which means that FFA was sending them emails to headquarters saying, please take sponsorship off, you're being deceptive, and they catered to that concern. Why is it important for Muslims? First of all, this was the first reality show in the media showing Muslims. The show after that, maybe with a larger script and a larger diversity of race and age, they're going to need sponsorship. And there's going to be many companies that are going to say, no, we saw how this played out. Don't come knocking on our door. And for those sponsors, we won't even know if they say no or yes. So how do communities get a face on the media if they don't have sponsorship? And how do we get to know people that are not our neighbors, but we see them around, we see them on the streets, and we want to learn more about them if we don't have the ability to see them on the media? The media is such a powerful tool now. Why is it important for all of us, meaning not just Muslims in America, but our collective future? It's important because in the United States Constitution, all Americans are given certain rights. That is to practice their religion, and they are to be respected for their dignity and their faith. There are patriotic Muslims, there are patriotic Jews, there are patriotic Christians, Hindus, Buddhists. But the reality is that once we allow smaller groups to have louder voices than the majority, we start confusing who the majority is. And that is a problem. The fact that Lowe's took this step and did not consult with the majority, which the majority is everybody is equal, Muslim Americans are not terrorists. And I can say that as a Muslim American, I don't feel walking around that people think I'm a terrorist. But there are a few people who would like people to think that. And we need to be very clear that the majority stays the majority. And that's why it's so important to have this discussion, evaluate it, and let's discuss what steps can community members take to roll up our sleeves and say, you know what, not on our watch. Don't make money off people that shop there and then tell other people that they're terrorists. And don't cater for the bottom line to groups that advocate hate because they are your customers. You have to be very, very clear. And I would repeat, when Representative Murphy had stated, member of Congress, he clearly stood up and stated that many of you may think this is a public discourse and Congress should not get involved. But he as an elected official was so enraged and he said, you're dead wrong. When there is bigotry, you need to stamp it out or it grows. It's a disease, so we need to stamp it out together. So, as I had stated earlier, that
Thank you for inviting me to be part of this important town hall today. And especially on this day, Dr. King's birthday. In fact, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born 83 years ago today. Assassinated over 40 years ago, his powerful legacy lives on. Dr. King fought on behalf of and with oppressed communities, not in defiance of American ideals, but in the name of them. His famous words echo strongly as ever. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Dr. King emphasized that though our past, as well as our present, are engulfed by the oppression, racism, and discrimination that targets minority communities, as a society, we all face a common future. The Jewish Council on Urban Affairs stands strong here today with you, stating loudly and clearly that the outrage felt by Muslims and by all people of goodwill regarding Lowe's shameful actions reflects our outrage as well. Lowe's cowardice in buckling to the right-wing Florida Family Association's demand that it pull its ads from the reality show All American Muslim, and Lowe's subsequent justifications for these acts are deeply offensive and attack the very core of our democracy. While acquiescing to the Florida Family Association's hate-filled pressure, Lowe's claimed business-centered motivations, asserting that, quote, "We have a strong commitment to diversity and inclusion," unquote. In the classic form of blaming the victim, Lowe's called the depiction of an American Muslim family, quote, "a lightning rod." In his letter from the Birmingham jail, Dr. King addresses this situation, articulating the danger posed by those who would embrace the values of equality, while at the same time demonstrating discomfort or opposition to the very paths and expressions of change. He stated, quote, "I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, 'I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action,' who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season." We say today to Lowe's, and to all those who would cower to any and all anti-Muslim pressure, this is the season for change. It is so late, not too early, for all America to be brought into the home of an American Muslim family, or an American Christian family, or an American Jewish family, or an immigrant family, or an African American family. It is not too early, it is so late. This is the time. We are here to insist that material concerns and spiritual concerns cannot be neatly separated. Let me take you for a moment from Dr. King's Atlanta and from our Chicago to 19th century Lithuania, where a bold young Orthodox rabbi called Israel Salantar founded the Musar movement. Rabbi Salantar emphasized to his disciples that everyday life of business must be closely tied to Jewish ethics. His famous words, repeated by Jewish scholars since, were, "The other's material needs are my spiritual needs." The spirit of these teachings must be alive today. As a recent example, we acted to put these important ideas into practice. In 2008, JCUA called upon Jews everywhere to join with us in the tiny town of Postville, Iowa, where agri-processors' kosher meatpacking plant carried out unfair and unsafe labor practices. We asserted that these practices were unacceptable to us, an affront to the ethical kosher laws and to our Jewish values. In protest, Jews across America stopped purchasing agri-processors' tainted goods. They joined instead newly inspired movements that strengthened the expression of our dietary laws to explicitly include fair labor practices and other social justice and environmental matters. We expect business in our community to participate in our spiritual effort as a community to do good, to be good. Though consumer choice should not be seen as the only way to be an active participant in our democratic life, we must make clear to businesses that they must answer not only to their shareholders, but primarily to us, their stakeholders. Those of us in our communities who are affected by the practices of corporations have the power, we have the power to hold them accountable, and we must be prepared to do so. As we are taught by a young Lithuanian rabbi who knew the face of oppression in Europe over 150 years ago, we must reclaim the everyday sphere of material matters as a spiritual sphere. Collectively, we have the power to do so. Let us be strong in our will to stand powerfully together against hate and intolerance and be fortified by Dr. King's concluding words from his letter from the Birmingham jail, stating, and I quote, "Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty."
Should I use this or this?
I think that's on.
Okay, you guys can all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, hello, shalom, assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Maria, for inviting me. I just planned to come and speak for a few minutes sort of about strategy in coordinating a response to Lowe's and share some background on what happened. I'm sorry I don't have as inspiring and riveting words as Jane, and she always has beautiful words to share, so thank you also for coming. But I'm here representing CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. We are the largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy group in the country, and I'm here on behalf of the Chicago chapter, and I can't think of a better occasion to discuss this important topic than on the birthday of Martin Luther King, our civil rights hero. And it's so interesting to me that, you know, the struggles that he had 50, 60 years ago, they're still alive today. I mean, this type of bigotry and hate, it never leaves. It changes forms, it attacks society in different ways, but throughout the history of our country, from the beginning, we've always had this element of bigotry on the fringes that we've had to deal with. It wasn't always a fringe, but it has always been there. And it doesn't discourage me. I don't, feel pessimistic about the future, as some might often ask me as a Muslim civil rights activist, with all of the, discrimination and fear-mongering that we face, and particularly after September 11th, but even before September 11th. When do you think that, people ask, when do you think this hate will finally dissipate? Do you think that Muslims will ever be fully accepted in American society? And I tell them, yes, I'm sure we will be. I feel, for the most part, we are fully accepted already. And those groups like the Florida Family Association that stir up these controversies, they are the fringe, and we just need to make sure we work with mainstream Americans, the majority of Americans, level-headed, peaceful, tolerant people, to uphold our nation's values, because sometimes those values get clouded by, by media frenzies, by, I think, sometimes ignorance and misplaced fear. And that's why I really like working in communications at CARE. I am the director of our communications department, and our organization's mostly known for the legal work that we do. Our attorneys who represent victims of hate crimes and discrimination, but I think the work that we do in communications is equally important because it's getting at the heart of the problem, the root cause of discrimination and hate crimes, which is ignorance, fear, misinformation, misplaced fear in particular. So by educating the public, by reaching out to our partners, friends, and neighbors, that's going to hopefully put our legal department out of business one day, and they won't have so many hate crimes to deal with, because we will cultivate a climate where people understand their Muslim friends and neighbors and see them as, just as patriotic and just as American as everyone else. And so I commend the show and TLC for bringing the show All American Muslim, because it's doing precisely that, what our media's had to do for decades, which is bring in minority culture, I guess, minority sitcoms and entertainment and education programs and educate people. You know, some might complain and call it tokenizing, but it's really educating people by bringing more minority characters into our mainstream media and entertainment. So in terms of, you know, how I think we need to go about, you know, challenging Lowe's and making sure that something like this doesn't happen again, I guess I always immediately look at everything from a public relations perspective as a media person. And I think that any impact that we take here locally needs to be felt by the corporation nationally. And I hope that we will have a discussion, you know, as panelists and the audience about, you know, what our next steps are, what is the best strategy to go about doing this, and then we can share ideas with one another. But I just want to discuss some things that have happened so far and my ideas for what we can do and continue to do from here on out. So, I mean, the decision to pull the ads was, of course, made by the national office in North Carolina. You know, it's not the Chicago branch that had anything to do with that. But we here in Chicago, in the greater Chicagoland area, need to still do our part and make our voices heard. So something that we've done is coordinate with the National Boycott Lowe's movement, and you can visit their website, lowesboycott.com. There you can sign on to a petition, which has already been signed by over 40,000 other people. And you know, this will also let Lowe's know that this controversy hasn't boiled over. Their inaction and their plain rhetoric and their public statements did not fool or appease anybody. We're still displeased with what they've done. And then also on the website, you can see how to organize locally and promote sort of the local boycotts. There's also the Facebook page, Boycott Bigotry. I would suggest, you know, you friend that page or like that page and become a fan of it, Boycott Bigotry. And that will also tell you what's going on across the country and what you can do locally. Some things that we've encouraged people to do is to, one, write a letter, and we already have a letter created if you want a template to use. You can contact me to figure out how to get a copy of that. I think you might be able to get a copy online as well. And get your friends and family and as many people as you can to sign on to this letter and send it to your local Lowe's, the regional office, and then the headquarters in North Carolina. And then also, we're encouraging people as part of the movement to print out signs that say boycott Lowe's. Very simple, 2 words, boycott Lowe's. Write it on a board and go to your local Lowe's with a camera. Take a picture of yourself standing outside with their logo, you know, with the name of the store, Lowe's. Take a picture of yourself there and send it again to the regional branch and the national headquarters and let them know we are still not shopping at your store. We are not going to forget what you've done until you make a real apology for this. You know, it might be too late for them to buy back ad space. That's not what we're asking for. We just want them to acknowledge that what they did was wrong. And also, whether or not they acknowledge it, we still need to affect their image, their public image, because we might not win this battle, you know, one-on-one with Lowe's, but we need to make it clear to other corporations, other businesses out there that this type of bigotry is not accepted. The Muslim community is a force to be reckoned with. We have many friends and partners in other faith communities. We do not stand alone, and this will not be tolerated. So the next time a company thinks about doing this, they will have hell to pay. You know, we just have to show them that, you know, this isn't tolerable, and hopefully, you know, it won't have to be just intimidation that and you know, ruining someone's public image that gets them to think clearly. Hopefully we can also educate them on why this move was wrong, why the show All American Muslim is not controversial at all. And I think that this is very apparent to the more liberal Americans out there. Our public discourse in this country tends to be very divided amongst those who lean towards liberal ideas and those who lean more conservatively. And if we look at sort of the liberal side of the American general public, this battle has been won. I mean, the mainstream media, comedy shows like The Daily Show, The Colbert Report, have all lambasted Lowe's for what they've done and ridiculed them, and I think that we've done an effective job of making sure that this issue became well known and stirred public discourse. Because whether or not we convinced all Americans that what Lowe's did was wrong, at least we created a discussion about it. By not ignoring it, not staying silent, but actually being very outspoken and taking action, and people across the country showing up in front of Lowe's, and people in North Carolina setting up meetings with the board at the National Lowe's headquarters. All these things stirred a public discussion, which is healthy. Again, whether you clearly win or lose is not the issue. So that when we have these discussions, then we educate people on what the issues are. And those who are inclined towards good, those of, clear conscience, tolerant Americans will understand the issue better and will side with us. So in that sense, I think that, it doesn't matter that Lowe's didn't purchase the ads back. I think we've done a good job thus far of making sure that, this issue got national attention, and we can make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. We'll know what to do the next time it happens, because controversies like this have happened in the past too. I mean, I believe it was a few years ago that Rachel Ray was wearing a keffiyeh, the Palestinian scarf, in a Dunkin' Donuts ad. And some hate groups pressured Dunkin' Donuts to pull those ads because she was wearing a terrorist symbol. And same thing, we had to show these companies, and at least other companies for the future, that these claims are ridiculous, and these people who are contacting you, like the Florida Family Association and Bare Naked Islam and sites like Jihad Watch, these are not the mainstream. These are fringe groups, as Maria was stating earlier. And as long as we make that known, then I think we've done our job of upholding our American values, upholding the Constitution, honoring our civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King, and continuing our civil rights struggle to uphold pluralism and tolerance in this country. So those are the main points I wanted to bring up about strategy, and I hope to hear more from you guys afterwards, but I'll pass the mic over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Good evening. Is it really? Wow. I think my grandkids, it still seems like afternoon. My name is Jan Chawlitz, and I'm the Director of Congregational Care and Adult Ministries from Faith United Methodist Church. I'm also the Christian co-chair for SWIP, the Southwest Interfaith Team. I don't come speaking on behalf of either of those organizations. I speak on behalf of myself as a Christian. And I think back to some of the things I've heard today, and three words that really pop out at me is fear, education, and change. I think back to my childhood. I grew up in Tinley Park, back long, long time ago when Tinley wasn't on a map. And for circumstances that I won't go into now, I was going to high school in Chicago. And I took the train down to Chicago every day. And I met a lot of really great friends. Strange. Some of them weren't the same color as I was. I've always been colorblind, sorry. I brought my friends home with me. Mistake. The police chief met me coming back through the park to my house from the train station. He told me, "We don't bring those people here." Those people. Question mark, those people. They're my friends. No, we don't bring those people here. I was dumb. I kept bringing my friends home. He kept meeting me and telling me not to do this. That was strange to me. When I went to college, My dad worked for the government. Stupid me. I got engaged to a Japanese fella. My dad's boss called me in, and he said, "We don't do that." I said, "What?" "We don't do that. You could get your dad in trouble." And I looked at him and said, "You know what? You may own my dad, but you don't own me. You can get your dad in a lot of trouble." Well, I never married the guy. He ended up being a liar, but oh well. So be it. But I have seen this firsthand. And then I was in a house fire, and I destroyed my face and my arm. It was webbed together like a duck's foot. You couldn't find eyes. There was no hair left. Now, when I was young, I worked as a model for the Chicago Tribune. After a house fire, when you burn your face down, you don't do that anymore. But I still went to the local Jewel where I always used to shop. And I had people call me a monster. And in front of my children tell me that I shouldn't be permitted to walk the streets because I scared people. Now, I was the same person inside that I had been before the fire. Super involved in the Cub Scouts, teaching kids about stop, drop, and roll, and how to put up a tent. Same person, taught Sunday school, had the same love of God inside of me, but now because I looked different, I was a monster and shouldn't be permitted to walk the streets. It is very strange to me where people develop this hatred from. And what I have seen, it is ignorance. It is truly ignorance. Back a long, long, long time ago, when Orland Park was just a tiny little town, it was almost all Protestants. You know, it's Catholics and Protestants, Catholics and Protestants. Hey, they used to fight too, come to think of it. And when I went to school, Catholic girls couldn't date Protestant boys, and vice versa. By the way, my first boyfriend was Catholic and I was Protestant. Always got that place where I had to do something. But when the Catholics wanted to move into Orland Park, somebody dared to burn a cross on their land. Ku Klux Klan. We don't want Catholics coming into Protestant area. Ignorance. Ignorance. What does it take to bring change? Well, in SWIFT, Southwest Interfaith Team, we have a tendency of sitting down and eating together. We're Christians and Muslims and Jews. We share food. We always make sure it meets dietary restrictions. We're good that way. We talk. We go and work at Habitat for Humanity or the Chicago Food Depository. And the thing that I have found out is we're all alike. We have kids that go to the same schools. We have kids that play on the same sports teams. And some of us even take the same train to Chicago to work at the same place. Gee, how strange that is. When I watched this TV show in question, and I did see this TV show in question, my thought was, gee, this reminds me of some of my Muslim friends. I go to their house and they're just like me. They drink tea. Good tea, by the way. Know that lady. It is really interesting when we begin to learn about each other. We are alike in so many ways. Whether we're Jewish or Christian or Muslim or whatever. There was some right given to this country about freedom of religion. It happened a long time ago when these people came over here. It still is valid today. We have the right for religion of freedom. As a Christian, one of the things that I learned a long time ago was that somebody dared to ask Jesus, who is my neighbor? Because Jesus had taught us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Now, Jesus didn't turn around and say, oh, you can only love your Christian neighbors. Because, by the way, the word Christian said Jesus was a very good Jew. But Jesus told a story about the Good Samaritan. And for those of you who don't know, Samaritans and Jews didn't like each other. Samaritans and Jews fought. Jews would go way out of their way to stay away from Samaritans. Samaritans intermarried. That wasn't acceptable because Jews were pure. But Jesus taught the story of the Good Samaritan, the man who helped the person who had been beaten almost to death and left laying along the side of the road. It was the Samaritan who stopped and took him to the inn and took care of him and gave the money and said, if you spend more than this, I will pay you on my way back. But take care of this man. And then he said to the Jewish man who said, who is my neighbor? He looked at him and said, now you tell me, who was the neighbor? Jesus gave us that example so that we knew our neighbors were everyone. Everyone. Not just my Christian neighbor living next door to me, not just your Muslim neighbor living next door to you, or your Jewish neighbor living next door to you. Your neighbor is everyone, and we are to love everyone and respect everyone. And it is through education that change will come about. Thank goodness Catholics do now marry Protestants. And there are even a few black people who live in Tinley Park, I know that. And St. Mike's was built on that land where the cross was burnt. Change does come about. But it is through education. Maybe Lowe's needs some education, I don't know. Maybe we all need some education. But I know that when we can sit and talk to each other, when we can learn about each other, the fear goes away. Back when I was a kid, my mom would never tell us anything about our heritage. I kept saying, Mom, where are we from? She would never tell us. We knew Daddy's family came from Lithuania. By the way, they were all Catholic and I was Protestant, so my grandma used to call me the little Jewish kid because I hadn't been baptized Catholic, so I was the outcast. But I still love my grandma. She was awesome, and she still loved me and taught me how to cook, and she was a great person. But when my mom was close to death and her mind was halfway gone, I finally said, Mom, where's your family from? And she finally said, Germany. And I said, Mom, what's the big secret? Why didn't you tell us all this time? And she said, well, what if one of our family members had been a Nazi? The neighbors would have hated us and treated us bad. And I said, Mom, you weren't a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. That has nothing to do with us. If we are guilty by association, then one way or another we're all guilty. Because somewhere back in our heritage, we've all had somebody who did something bad. But let me tell you, every single Muslim here is not a terrorist. Every single Lithuanian is not a Nazi. We can't hold people guilty by association. We have to sit down and talk to each other, learn from each other, and practice respect of each other. That's where it's going to come from. Respect each other. Yes, I used to shop at Lowe's. I liked Lowe's. They offered me a job once. I never took it. I bought my snowblower from Lowe's. But I won't shop there now. I think they're one of the best hardware stores in the area, or home improvement stores. But I won't shop there. I'm very disappointed in what they did. You can't have a knee-jerk reaction and say, oops, can't do that. No. They need to say sorry. They need to think about what they did. And we need to think about how to educate those around us. If you've never been involved in SWIFT, I challenge you to come and see what SWIFT is all about. It's a good group of people that sit around and talk to each other. Thank you.
There's been so much evocative about what's been spoken here, and I just want to quickly say that my path, similarly in a certain sense to Jan's, to my passionate work in relation to bias, and certainly in the last 10 years regarding Islamophobia and xenophobia, my path started in what I call appearance-ism, an ism that I think we all understand because we've all experienced it on some level. We've all done it to others because I think we sadly do make those judgments about others, and somehow we've all felt those judgments come at us in relation to some aspect of appearance. So at some point I believed we needed a word and started using the word appearance-ism, and I put a dash between the word appearance and ism. And my website is appearanceism.com, and you can go there and learn more about what has been a very unusual, remarkable journey that I've been on, which has included meeting extraordinary people, both extraordinary activists, as well as reaching out to the families of innocent people who were murdered in hate crimes. And after September 11th, people who were murdered in the backlash, the hate backlash after September 11th. And because I was already so enmeshed in this body of work, I just couldn't help myself. And after amassing a tremendous amount of information, much of which came from CARE in those early days, which did such a remarkable job of archiving and still does a fantastic job of notating what is going on and how real human beings are being impacted on a daily basis. I reached out to the families of innocent Sikh and Muslim and Hindu men who were murdered around the country. But I don't really want to go greatly into that story because I really do want to address this Lowe's issue. So I will point you to my website, appearanceism.com, and hope you go there and you can contact me through there. I also have business cards if you want. And also to this article, Where the Anti-Muslim Path Leads, which you can find in a number of places on the internet, but I would say go to a website, islamophobiatoday.com. And if you don't already know the website, islamophobiatoday.com, they do a wonderful job on a daily basis of really extracting and culling the most important, I think, stories of the moment and analyzing them. That piece, Where the Anti-Muslim Path Leads, tells a lot about my story and a lot about the work that I've done really virulently combating Islamophobia. It has received a lot of accolades, and I've also gotten hate mail, including from bare naked Islam, which will slam you against a wall, their hate mail. I won't even repeat what that is. So to get right down to the Lowe's matter, I also wrote 2 articles that appeared on a website called patheos.com. And between them, about the Lowe's issue, between them they garnered about 1,000 recommendations, people linking other people to them. And then I wrote a piece, again, you can find it on Islamophobia.com. So that's just the one site you can go to, and you can search, put the name Cordell into the search, and everything will come up. You could also put the word integral, because the piece that I wrote most recently was titled Muslims and Lowe's are both integral to our society. I certainly don't mean that Lowe's is equally integral to Muslims. Not at all. Lowe's is a corporation. It can come, it can go. It will come, it will go. It will go someday. Muslims are obviously, a completely different matter of degree and definition. How Muslims comprise an entity in our societies around the world. But I did mean that Lowe's has a place in our culture. It's a major employer. For some people, it's the closest, most convenient hardware store. And it is a corporation, as you said, that has some sway and influence. So I'm going to tell you about what my approach was and how I came to it. Martin Luther King said, men hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they are often separated from each other. And I think that is really critical, and our big question is, how can we interrupt this cycle? How can we change this cycle? And I think we have to create relationships. We have to get past the separation and the misinformation. And yelling at people or admonishments, or, and I respectfully differ from you here, signs, etc. Even though I can tell you that I have been in many protests and I have carried signs, and I understand the movement for justice, and I have worked for it, and people who I have tremendous respect for, we have worked together. But in this particular case, what happened for me was that when this came to light, I thought about the Muslim friends I have and people I know very, very well, and a boycott, the idea of a boycott didn't really gel with the personalities of the people who I knew, who are so gracious and so hospitable and so lovely. It was hard for me to picture them yelling. It was hard for me to picture them doing anything that would create any kind of polarizing or rancor. And so I really asked myself, well, what else? Is it possible for there to be a win-win in this situation? And is there a way that this situation could be transformational? Is there a way in which this situation could change hearts and minds and be used as a teachable moment, as an opportunity? And even though Lowe's, I am in complete agreement, did something very wrong, very despicable, you know those stories where sometimes a kid does something really wrong, takes the car and smashes it or whatever, and somehow the parent doesn't just do the knee-jerk punishing, but does something that's even more interesting, that changes the child, transforms the child, not so that it's just the quid pro quo of, you did it, now I'm punishing you, but that child really changes from inside. That's what I was trying to reach for. And I felt that what All-American Muslim did was that it helped people to get to know Muslims. That was the gist of the program. And I didn't feel that the boycott would help people get to know Muslims. I felt that's the problem, and we need to think of a different solution. So I had this idea that we should all by we I mean allies, Muslims, people who care about this issue, should actually go into Lowe's. And even if we bought just a single light bulb or a little tiny plant, and spent just a few dollars, but went in, so because we are part of the fabric of the culture. Muslims are part of the fabric of this culture. They are part of the people who are supporting Lowe's. As you said, it's a huge demographic of people spending money there. But even if we just spent a very small amount of money or a large amount of money, but went in with letters, with notes, asking to speak to the managers, chatting with the other customers when this was, hot and heavy, saying, we're here and we want to support your company and we don't want people to lose jobs and we don't want Lowe's to go under at a time when the economy is in such dire straits, which, by the way, bad economies are times when scapegoating surges historically. We know this. So, and we know that the employees of the local Lowe's aren't the people who made these decisions. So to yell at them or berate them or whatever doesn't, I think, make good sense. And that then we would say, we would make it obvious that we have a place at this table. We are in the conversation. And the conversation could continue. And as Maria said, I was very concerned, and I remain very concerned, that other corporations will not sponsor new programs that relate to anything Muslim, whether they're documentaries or sitcoms or whatever they may be. I mean, I'd love to see Little Mosque on the Prairie, which I think is such an interesting Canadian program you can watch on YouTube, come to the United States. But, I think many corporations will say, I'm not getting into this can of worms. Because what happened for Lowe's was that when they did this, and of course the boycott did receive 40,000 signatures, plus 200,000 people signed a different petition from a religious group that went to Lowe's. So there were many people who signed on about, what was wrong with this action. On the other hand, Lowe's started to hear from the haters, and they came out of the woodwork in droves, and they filled up Lowe's Facebook page with hateful comments. And basically their message to Lowe's was, we applaud you, we congratulate you, we love what you did, we think you're great, we're going to shop more at Lowe's now, we'll contradict any boycott that's out there, and in fact we'll love shopping at Lowe's better because we won't have to look at Muslims, and Lowe's will be a safer store because Muslims won't be walking through it. So Lowe's, in essence, I think, ended up between a rock and a hard place, and I'm not saying that those positions are equal, but I'm saying that as a corporation, they froze in place like a deer in the headlights and kind of chose to basically do nothing. They made a very tiny concession of a non-apology, and then when the petition with the 200,000 signatures landed, they said, well, in the future we will consult Muslims. That's a kind of a, who knows, what that will mean in point of fact. You may have seen some videos on YouTube of people going into Muslims, like Occupy Muslims, going in and sort of shouting a little bit and interacting with some of the managers. And again, these are not the people who made these decisions. So to berate these people it feeds the caricature. We know what the caricature is about Muslims now. We know that it's somebody who's angry, somebody who's a terrorist, somebody who's polarizing. That was a big concern that I had. There's another YouTube video of somebody who had bought $2,600 worth of appliances and hadn't yet had them delivered, so he went in with his receipt to the customer service person and returned them and said, I don't want these anymore. The reason is because of the boycott. And he walks out with his cash, and in the video, he walks out saying something that I won't repeat, something negative toward Lowe's in the video. And I felt really sad not that I don't understand the anger. The Islamophobia is so chilling and so terrifying to me. And I do talk about Anne Frank, and I'm really proud to have gotten that award. because I think we've seen the consequences of how these things play out. So I think it's a terribly chilling time, but I just don't think that strategically that was optimal. And I think that by staying outside of the store, and I actually, this is so silly, not in a certain kind of way, I feel sorry for Muslims who live in communities where Lowe's is the only hardware store in town, and now they may feel that they can't run in and get a light bulb or an electrical switch when they need it. And they shouldn't, as a part of the society, as allies and Muslims should feel we can go in anywhere, not that we have to be on the outside. So I had this idea and I wrote it up and it got a lot of attention. I realized that now the time is, there have been some developments and we have to sort of rethink now how this might play out and what it might look like. I do programs in schools and organizations, faith communities, universities, and deal with a lot of these issues and how they tie together, as well as my own really, unusual story. And one of the things that I emphasize is how we have to get into each other's lives and living rooms. We have to make those real and personal relationships so that it is a close friend who we want to be an ally for. Because this is not a Muslim problem, it's a human problem that's going on right now. And we need a lot of people, not just Muslims, but a lot of people working together around this problem. And Sikhs have been impacted as much as Muslims. Sikh men wear turbans, and they have been murdered, they have been attacked as much and teased and bullied as much as Muslims who are identifiable as Muslims. In a high school, in a local high school, at the end of a program, a student came up to me, a male student came up to me and took me aside and said, "Thank you so much for your program. I'm Muslim, but nobody here knows it." And it sent chills down my spine because it reminded me of Anne Frank, and it reminded me of what it means when you have to pass in order to be safe. And so I think Sikhs and Hindus and South Asians and Arab Christians and Muslims and Jews and everybody else, Christians and everybody else, we need to be in rooms working together. We need to be in living rooms making friendships together. And how do we do that? And what are the initiatives that we can create? And that's what I'm thinking very deeply about and writing about. I just sent an article off to an organization that's called Search for Common Ground that will be published, I think, Tuesday, about some specific initiatives. And how can we network together? What are the ways that we can work together and brainstorm together to really get under this issue? Because I am really concerned with where it is heading. And I know for a fact how many perfectly innocent people are being, not just, obviously murder is, beyond horrible, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Below that is an enormous triangle of people being impacted, like the son of a gentleman from CARE in New York. I spoke on a panel in New York last month, and a gentleman stood up and he said, "I have two questions. I have two things I want to say. The first one is that I have a son who asks me every single day, 'Daddy, why do we have to be Muslim?'" And that is heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. And that child is an innocent child, and that father is an innocent person who's being impacted on a daily basis, a tremendous amount of trauma being absorbed. That's not even the assaults and the graffiti and the arson and the murders. So it's huge and it's deep, and we know the history of how these things play out, and I think we really do need to think so strategically. And I have to say, I don't think that this Lowe's issue and the boycott is like the Montgomery bus boycott. I think there are different elements at play here, and as successful as that was, when people boycotted the buses in Montgomery and forced the company to allow everybody on the bus wherever they wanted to sit, the actual ingredients of this situation are different, and you cannot say, "We force you to sponsor us." And so it's more nuanced, and I think our response, I believe, has to be nuanced.
Thank you. I want to thank all of the speakers tonight. Now, here is the critical part of the town hall. I want to make very clear why this town hall, the first Lowe's town hall, I believe in the state, I'm not sure if there has been one in the country. Has there been one in the country about this specific issue? The reason why it's in Orland Park is because there's a large Muslim Arab community here in Orland and Tinley. Lowe's has stores here, and there's also a strong interfaith group and an entity that can build relationships and has built relationships. So in my mind, the first place to have a town hall would be in a place like this, because we can roll up our sleeves, come up with initiatives, and actually make headway to see what we can do, and then we'll take it to the next suburb, to the next suburb, to the next suburb, and that's how we really bring change. One thing that's clear from our speakers is that there is diversity in approach, that there is not one answer, but one clear theme is that there is education. We need to educate, we need to start speaking, and we need to be very vocal in a time when it's not easy to be. I also want to point out that we need to remind ourselves that corporate structures are institutions, they're buildings, they're factories, but there is a person who is signing the checks. There is a person who is speaking on behalf of a corporation. There is a person making money off your light bulbs and your small plants. So every corporation is run by a human being with thoughts and opinions. So what we also have to keep in mind is that it is not okay to become rich off people who hate and off people who are not worthy, who you think are not worthy of defending. That is very, very clear. So when we talk about institutions, let's always think about humans, because that's who's behind that desk. I'd like to open it up to questions now. And we can ask the panelists, is there a question from the audience as far as strategy is concerned specifically, or maybe more specific questions about FFA? And they can go to the mic. There's a mic right there in the center of the aisle. Please go ahead. And I would also please ask, since I'm the moderator and I'm not going to run over there and shut the mic off, is that everyone be polite and courteous and ask a question. We all have great ideas and great thoughts. We can have them one-on-one, but let's ask questions and really think when you speak. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm going to be here for 20 minutes at least.
I'm glad you're first.
I'm Gary Kopachinski, teach at Marian Catholic High School. I make one observation. I would bet that the people from the, Florida Family Association, the FFA, I would bet they were threatening boycotts. I would bet they were threatening some kind of, corporate boards don't listen unless it's going to be about the bottom line. And I personally would endorse a strategy that shows the absence of Muslims, Christians, Jews from the store, and just get them to think about, who do we really want to walk with? Is it the haters, or is it the people, the 99%, if you will, of us who are shopping on a day in, day out basis? Thanks.
Hello? This is not on.
That's okay. I can respond. I would agree. In due respect, the corporations are economic engines. That's why they're there. That's why they're in business, and that's what they respond to. So I think the element, and there is, as we look back on any important legislation that has pushed back against racism and discrimination, the element of a boycott has been a very powerful strategy. And in this instance, I think we need to send a message. And I know we are saying to our organization, to our community, and have asked our members to sign petitions that they have no interest in going into Lowe's without the Lowe's policy being turned around. And I do think that that is part of our strategy. Has got to be letters, has got to be messages to Lowe's. And it's not just Lowe's. So the message doesn't just, it isn't just about Lowe's. This is about corporate America, small businesses, large businesses, that we as an interfaith community and across race, across faith, across class, that we are joined together in our choice that we will give our dollars to those businesses that share our values, and we will walk away from those businesses that don't, so that the next time businesses are buying ads, are making choices, that message is loud and clear. And I think it's very important that we send the message, that we continue to send the message. That's why I'm so grateful to be here today, and in the spirit of Dr. King, it was a very important element, and it has been a very important element for social change from then until through today.
Specifically, I have a question, Jane. When you say that for J.C. Wade's stance, that you will boycott unless they change their policy. So it's different from apologizing. So when you say change their policy, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, I think we have to watch for signals. We haven't seen a signal that's sufficient. And I think an apology is interesting, is important. I'm interested, and again, it's not just us. There are, as there are communities across the country who are interested in this, I think we do put our heads together and look at strategies. So what is an important enough action? I'm not sure. But an apology is a start. I personally want to see more than, I want to see more than an apology. A company that makes this bad of an error, this offensive of an error, it's easy to apologize. I want to see a commitment to the community. I want to see an affirmative commitment. That may be corporate support for educational programs that are anti-discriminatory educational programs. It may be corporate support for future programs that are supportive of the Muslim community. I personally, as a Jew, and as a part of America, I want to see a real stance.
Sure.
I don't know if I mentioned that I was Jewish. I don't think it was in the introduction. I just thought that, especially when you had the T-shirt that said Marian Catholic, I thought your name was going to be Marian. I thought my T-shirt, my sweatshirt should say Anya Jewish. But, so I think I failed to fill in a piece of the strategy that I was trying to explain. So if the person who had bought the $2,600 worth of appliances had said, I don't want to have to return these. I may well return these, but I want to sit down and I want to talk with the manager and I want to explain what my problem is and why I may be returning these. And certainly if the big contractors who are remodeling and people, doing big jobs, thousands and thousands of dollars, and in addition to that, many individuals with just a small purchase, even as I said, a light bulb. 200,000 people signed that other petition and 40,000 signed the boycott petition. So that's 240,000 people. So even if those were just $2 or $3 purchases, obviously that's a drop in the bucket for Lowe's, but it's a statement. It is a statement saying, we want to be with you. We want to support you. We want to be in conversation with you. We don't want to be standing outside, keeping people from going in and shopping We want somehow to create a conversation. We want you to get to know us. Not so that you just cave and do that because you cave. Because as I said, I think if Lowe's just caves, then the other corporations, and as you said, Maria, in back rooms where nobody will know what is happening, they won't bother to sponsor Muslim programs because they'll say it's a no-win situation between the haters and the Muslims. We just don't want to even get involved. And the fact is that people who have taken their business to Home Depot has an abysmal record about support of very conservative and negative causes. So you're not necessarily supporting a corporation that is, really lovely in other respects. So my idea was to think about just one way, but more ways that we can change that dynamic. With all due respect to the people who have done boycotts that have been impactful and have been important, I just think this is slightly different. And just quickly, Lowe's has a program where each year each local Lowe's apparently identifies a community improvement project. And this particular article is about how they went and they rebuilt and fixed up a local food pantry in California. So, that might be an idea, asking Lowe's to support various Muslim organizations that are doing good, important work as well. Do it. Their slogan is "Let's build something together." I agree. Let's build something together, Lowe's. Let's build our society together as well as buildings.
I think sitting here in the middle, I hear both ends, and I go back to those three words: fear, educate, change. And I think that's kind of the basis of the whole thing, is that somehow, some way, we have to educate so that the fear is gone. And then we bring about change. Now, I personally, when a good friend of mine does something that really hurts me, I sit down and I try and talk to them. I try and work with them. We try and work out a situation. And then if that doesn't work, yeah, I walk away. But I think right now, Lowe's needs education. What that's going to take, how that's going to come about, I don't know. Maybe Lowe's would get to the point of saying, okay, come in and help educate our people about Muslims. That would be a great start. I'd be on board with that. I'd be more than willing to go and help educate their people about Muslims. Maybe we could invite some of the Lowe's executives to the next Swift dinner and say, sit down and eat with us. We promise not to poison your food. I don't know what it's going to take, but it needs education. Because it is through education that we eliminate fear and then change comes about. So somehow, some way, education needs to come. And it needs to come to this area. And if we can only change one corner, let it be my corner of the world.
Also, I'd like to add on the note of boycotts and why it's a strategy that I support. We don't have boycotts. We don't support boycotts where people are yelling and screaming. As Anya mentioned in her speech, that it doesn't really seem like your Muslim friends are suited to do that. They're not the type of people who yell and scream. Yes, I agree, we aren't for the most part, and that's why we make sure that isn't the type of boycotts that we have. Boycotting means, writing letters, making phone calls, signing petitions, and then even when you go to the store with the sign, don't go stand in front of the store with your sign and scream at people and make a scene. You could stand there silently and just say, boycott Lowe's, come ask me why, and just have a dialogue there in front of the store. We make sure that in all of our action alerts, when we tell people to contact a corporation or public officials, we have a note there, be polite and be respectful. It actually says, as always, remember, be polite and be respectful. And I think that that's why I focused a lot on talking about the company's public image and having a public discourse, because I think boycotts don't necessarily have a large impact economically. You know, even if all of us here and all the 200,000 people who signed the petition stopped shopping there or started shopping there and bought, you know, a light bulb, it won't make a big difference to them financially. But that's why we need to kind of threaten their public image. That's where we'll have the greatest impact. And, you know, the Muslim community in North Carolina did meet with the Lowe's headquarters. I believe the Charlotte community did, and Lowe's agreed to support community initiatives, but I don't know if they've actually done anything yet, or if that was just, you know, an empty promise. So I think the next step also is to ask for results and see what are you doing with your local Muslim community there? How are you supporting dialogue and you know, citing their motto, let's build something together. What have you built together? Until we actually see something that we're pleased with, something concrete, we're going to continue this peaceful boycott.
I think from listening to our panelists that it is a multifaceted approach. There's not one way to go about it. You know, I think back to the tenets of our faith, of Islam, is that you're right, you know, we are compassionate, we are humane, we're generous, we're gracious. That is our character. But it also says when you see something unjust, speak. You know, so we have to have a balanced, multifaceted approach, and I think that is the best sophisticated way to move forward, to understand who the allies are, who are not. And there is a space for everybody. I just want to reiterate, there is a space for everybody in this movement. Whether it be someone to hold a sign, or someone to actually buy the light bulb and walk in, or spend $10,000 and walk in and say, I'm not going to, you know, accept this. So you have to recognize what space you belong in, find out how to develop that into a leading strategy with the leadership in your community, and then move forward. But do not do nothing and expect that there's going to be change, because it's not going to be.
Okay, my name is Jules Blazes. I'm a Christian Sufi master teacher. And punishment has never been the solution. We've tried that for 10,000 years. The first question we really need to ask is, what in myself has created this problem? Because it starts with us. It doesn't start with Lowe's. And it started with the people that they something in themselves. And how are you looking to answer the situation? They came from fear and anger. Are you answering in anger? Are you joining the game, or do you want to get above the game? Now, a boycott has its effects, but who is it going to punish? Is it going to punish the people who made the decision? Absolutely not. It's going to punish the everyday man who works at Lowe's, and they're going to create this opinion that you were the cause of me being laid off. So that's not going to hurt. Why do you want to hurt them? That's not the idea. The idea is to create discourse, to create understanding, to create forgiveness, to create compassion. You want to change something, you change it from within. You can't change anything permanently from without. Hitler tried the punishment thing. It did not work, did it? It's been done over in every culture and every religion. So you want to change them? Go and apply for jobs there. Change Lowe's from within. Not from without, not from the sense of punishment. Change them from the sense of, okay, I'm going to become part of this corporation, and I am going to change myself, and in that case, change the corporation of Lowe's. You know, don't hurt the people that didn't make the decision. That doesn't do anything. You know, and don't think about hurting the people who made the decision. Educate them, let them know who you are, that you really walk the talk of forgiveness, compassion, and politeness. And I don't know, that's just an idea. Just apply for jobs there.
I think a repetitive theme really is, and I would hope that the leaders of the interfaith community in these suburbs take this discussion further beyond tonight. But the repetitive theme is that we have to be smarter than those that offend us. We have to be strategic and smarter and use all our manpower, intellect, because I do think this is going to be a fight of intellect to move forward. Go ahead.
I think it's not mutually exclusive. That we have, that we send a strong message with a boycott or with a light bulb. That is also a way that communities get educated. I know that our community, as we ask our community, and our community expresses their really righteous anger, and I think it's okay for us to express and say, I'm angry that we were discriminated against. And it's an honest thing. If I have a difference with my sweet husband, and I express myself, say I'm not happy with that, then that's a way that we communicate. If I don't express that, he doesn't know. And in the same way as communities, one way for us to express that we are not happy with the corporation's actions is to say, I have many choices and I have many places to go, and because of your decision to withdraw your ads, it wasn't a choice not to place the ad initially. It was a choice after they placed the ad to withdraw the ad in response to another organization that said, you're putting ads for a show that shows the everyday life of the Muslim community. And they asked Lowe's to withdraw their money, and they did. They did. That was not a small action. So I'm angry. I, as a person of faith, and as a friend and a partner, I'm angry, and I'm okay with that. And I think it's, but I'm not going to yell at the person who works in the store, and I'm not going to be disrespectful, and that's not our expressing our, whether we sign a petition or we ask for a meeting, and I think we should sit with Lowe's officials. We should ask for a meeting. When we were angry with agri-processors, kosher meat packing plant, we asked for a meeting, and we got a meeting with those officials. And we asked for them to change their positions. And we said, we cannot buy your food unless this changes. And the current company, and that company had a demise. That company is gone. But the company that replaced it understood and heard that there was economic power within our community that said they were not going to purchase their products, so they were not going to act the same, or they did not want to suffer the same result. So I think that I think it's a blending, as Maria said. I don't think it's not one strategy, and it's not our being abusive of Lowe's employees. It's our sending a message to the corporation. It's our educating our community, educating them. So I think it's a multiplicity, and it calls for a multiplicity of strategies that they have room for anything that we've discussed.
I have a question. Did we invite Lowe's here?
Oh yes, I should make that announcement. I actually did call Lowe's, the local Lowe's at Orland Park. They connected me to their public relations department. I spoke to them and sent them the invitation. They said they were going to look over the invitation, and I didn't hear back. So, but they were invited, and they did not say no. Maybe it's stuck in corporate, but they were
I think
invited.
that really education is a very important thing that we keep hearing here tonight. And I think that possibly with SWIFT, we can think about inviting them to the next dinner. I think that maybe, I know that Lowe's has a great program to help kids learn to use tools and things like that. Maybe the mosque can ask Lowe's to come out and work with the kids here. Encourage them to take steps of interaction with Muslims so that they really see that you might be like everybody else. Educate, educate, educate. Somehow, some way, we need to interact with them and make them realize.
When I worked for corporate America, I realized that the voice of the manager of the lower stores speaks volume to the people up there. If we can make the people at the local store realize that we are 24/7 God-fearing people, you and me, all of us, that we are respectful and kind people, and that we can help them realize that we all live together in this neighborhood.
John Mahoney, and I am one of those contractors that build mosques. And one thing that Lowe's is missing is that the actual builders spend, on average, $3 to $5 million per mosque to get them up and going. And that's not including the residuals of maintenance and community support after they're built. In Chicago area, there's about 10 mosques on the drawing board, if not more. And they're between $3 and $5 million apiece. So that's $30 to $50 million within the Chicagoland area. If you took that and extrapolated out across the United States, you're talking $300 million to $700 million. That's not small pennies. And for us, what we do is, because each mosque is custom built, they're not like a subdivision where you can cookie cut it. They're individually built, designed, and built for that community. So we're spending, or these members of these congregations are building community centers custom for their communities. And for Lowe's to miss that opportunity is just insane. And so I'm a small little piece of that $3 to $5 million, but I spent last year $10,000 on between Lowe's, Menards, and Home Depot. Well, now it's going to be $10,000, probably all with Menards, because of what here is the corporate of Lowe's and Home Depot are just as bigoted against your communities. So, okay, I follow what you want me to do. I'm your contractor. That's where I'm going to spend the money. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kyle Barrett. As a teenager, it's not like I have many chances to shop at Lowe's, but in the future, I definitely will be boycotting them. I agree with Mrs. Corbell. There are measures that can be taken aside from a boycott that can make this incident come to light, but I feel like the incident was so severe that a boycott is what is needed at this time. Thank you.
I'd like to say a quick thing about the media. I think that, Lowe's is one entity, Muslims are another entity, hate mongers are another entity, and take all of those out of the picture and you're left with just a big mass of people who don't even really care about this. They're not really that interested. They want to shop where it's convenient and where they can get the best bargain, and that's it, and they don't want to be bothered too much. And whatever their news source is where they may be forming their opinions. And so the picture that gets put in front of the media is a very important picture. And another thing I neglected to clarify was that if we were all walking out with a light bulb or with a plant, light bulb to symbolize enlightenment, a plant to symbolize growth, and made sure the media got the picture of the 100 people or the 1,000 people walking out with the light bulbs. That's a media image. And I don't think that's a very easy image for Fox or the arch conservatives to go at. Oh, those terrible Muslims, they bought light bulbs. You know, I just don't think that it feeds the caricature, but instead it's interesting and kind of funny and kind of interesting. And I think we need to look for some of those sort of interesting approaches because it's that wide swath of people that we want to impact, not just the corporate heads.
Hello, my name is Danish Hedner. I just wanted to discuss the political dynamic of this problem that a lot of the speakers touched on. With the Republican primary season and the election full swing, there's been a lot of anti-Islamic comments coming from our leaders, whether it be Herman Cain saying that he would not have Muslims in his cabinet because they can't be trusted, a lot of the other candidates. What effect do you think this Islamophobia on the national stage, especially coming from the Republican Party, but also from the Democratic Party, comes from both sides of the spectrum? My question is, what effect does this Islamophobia coming from our leaders, what effect does this have on problems such as these, and what strategy could you guys think of to combat these problems?
I think part of this, and I really appreciate your statement, part of this is the importance of all people of faith in support of it, in solidarity, in this instance with the Muslim community. In instances where my parents couldn't move into communities because of restrictive covenants, in support of the Jewish community and the African American community. I think in the political environment, I think it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous when political leaders or faith leaders or you have it, get away with making discriminatory comments if there is silence. The danger is silence. But if we, as people of faith and all people, stand together and say, it is not acceptable to me that there is an attack on your community. Because if there's an attack on your community and I'm silent, what's going to happen when there's an attack on my community? So I think it is a very dangerous. It is very dangerous. There is a very virulent stream that we hear. That's Islamophobia, anti-immigrant is another. Feels very related in the level of animosity, and so it is. I think that this is a very important time. That we take every opportunity we can to say we are one people and we will stand against hate together, no matter if it's directed towards whichever of our communities. And I love it with the young people, that we have young people here standing up and expressing your commitment. It's so important that you take that back. So important that you take that back to your friends, to your communities, to your organizations. And that's very inspiring to me that you're here.
Let's give the young people an applause, actually.
And I wanted to add, thank you for bringing that up, that, Lowe's isn't the only group that's done this. We're seeing repeatedly in the media and in our political debates that many of our political and economic leaders have no problem making anti-Muslim statements and being Islamophobic. They don't feel any consequences of it. And that's why I think Muslims are not in the position of being able to just turn the other cheek whenever someone knocks us down. That strategy is not working. It's ironic that the stereotype is that we are violent, angry people, because I think we're a little too peaceful sometimes to just accept it when people make these derogatory comments and malign our community. And we do need to be more vocal and more outspoken. And I appreciate that our friends and partners in the interfaith community are always very vocal, and often more vocal and more outspoken than we ourselves are, about why this is wrong, why we cannot tolerate comments like the example you gave of Herman Cain and other Republican candidates often make, but it is in all parties. It can't be tolerated, and that's why we do need to, I think, be more firm and more strict and show the Muslim community as a force to be reckoned with. If you want to silently hold negative opinions about our faith group, I mean, I can't stop you. Through education, I will try to change your opinion, but if I can't, I at least want you to know that it's not acceptable for you to say these things publicly. Sometimes I feel like Islamophobia is the last accepted form of racism. It's the last tolerated form of racism. I play this game with myself that, take out the word Muslim from Herman Cain's statement and insert instead the term Jewish or black. That would be funny because he's an African American man. No one would tolerate that statement. People would immediately recognize what's wrong with it. But when it's said about a Muslim, there's still not very much outrage, disappointment, backlash, even from our so-called liberal media like MSNBC and whatnot. They don't jump on those things very quickly. It's still okay to have anti-Muslim sentiments. And so that's why I really call on everybody from not just the Muslim community, but other communities who have been doing a great job, call on everybody to be less tolerant of this type of bigotry.
I just one comment about what you said, and I agree with you, except I really pray that it is the last form, but I'm afraid you're just the current form, unfortunately. And my name is Jo Ellen Simmons, and I'm here more to give an advertisement than anything. I was asked to speak here on behalf of the SWIFT organization, Southwest Interfaith Team. It's a group of well-respected places of worship in this area created just over 8 years ago, basically for the same reasons we're gathered here tonight. We are here attending this town hall meeting because we can only agree with the intent of what we hope to achieve tonight, and also because we believe our SWIFT mission statement does indeed honor the legacy of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Our mission statement is, the mission of SWIFT is to promote dialogue among Christian, Jews, and Muslim religious communities, and to work together on common community projects. The hope is that the efforts of SWIFT will promote mutual respect and will build understanding among these religious communities. SWIFT is made up of Christian churches, Jewish synagogues, and Muslim mosques centered around but not restricted to the south and southwest suburbs of Chicago. They are the American Islamic Association in Frankfurt, B'nai Yehuda Beth Shalom in Homeward, Faith United Methodist Church of Orland Park, Franciscan Sisters of the Sacred Heart in Frankfurt, Orland Park Prayer Center Mosque, Peace Memorial United Church of Christ, St. Andrew's United Methodist Church in Homewood, St. Michael's Catholic Church of Orland Park, St. Stephen's Catholic Church of Finley Park, and Temple Anei Shalom Olympia Fields. It is not the goal of SWIFT to convert any group to the beliefs of another, and also we don't take political stands. But we encourage those who are not familiar with us to find out more about us. SWIFT would like its voice to be heard wherever people of conscience raise their voice against religious intolerance.
Thank you.